Hi, everyone. Welcome to this very special edition of the Revenue Growth Help Desk from SBI. Today's show is centered around women in revenue, and I have the honor and privilege to be sitting amongst some of the heaviest hitters in B2B revenue, and not just because they are women, but because they are incredible in their respective fields. I'm Melissa Valdez, Director of Client Engagement, and today's show, we are going to continue our discussion from last month on diversity, equity, and inclusion in celebration of Women's History Month. Now, let this be known that I have had the distinct pleasure of watching all three of these women give clinics to their peers in SBI's most intimate events, including the Client Advisory Board and industry roundtables. So let's get started by introducing ourselves. We'll go around the room and quickly introduce yourself. Deb, we'll start with you.
Hi, Melissa. I'm really happy to be here. I am the Chief Revenue Officer for LSEG, the London Stock Exchange Group. I came from Refinitiv. We've recently just been acquired by LSEG, so I have responsibility for the Chief Revenue Officer role within the data and analytics business, and also the group strategic accounts across LSEG.
How about you, Pilar?
Good morning. My name is Pilar Schenk. I lead sales, strategy, and operations at McAfee, and it's just a pleasure and honor to be here with these ladies.
We are happy to have you. Tracy?
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Tracy Hansen. I am a fractional CMO or fractional executive working with Chief Outsiders. I have been in marketing for over 20 years and worked closely with the CROs and heads of sales at a number of companies from startups to Fortune 100.
Outstanding. I told y'all we have some heavy hitters today. So it wasn't that long ago that girls, at least I remember when I was growing up, we were told we could be anything we wanted to be, right? As long as it fit within a certain little box, right? I don't know a lot of women who woke up one day and said, I'd like to be the Chief Revenue Officer of a publicly traded company, or I want to work in private equity someday. So with that said, I mean, I didn't hear a lot of that anyway. When did you decide to be what you are when you grew up? And who in your career inspired, encouraged, or mentored you to get to where you are now? Deb, we'll start with you.
Wow, it's funny, I often say to people, I certainly didn't come out of the womb thinking that I wanted a job in data. In fact, I don't think data even existed when I was thinking about a career. And having grown up on a sheep farm in Australia, there was no, sort of career talk. It was always, what's a good job for a girl? So I really don't know when I turned the corner on that. I just do know that I was fortunate to have parents that gave me a great sense of confidence and self-esteem, and I had an incredible drive to be pretty much the best at anything I did. I wasn't always, but I wanted to be, and I think that drive really propelled me into a career in sales. I also had a desire for nice things in life, so I knew I needed to earn well, and was brave and bold enough to put myself in the way of opportunities that came along. But I can't look back in time honestly and say, this is when I set my sights on this particular career. I've had a great, fortunate opportunity to pursue opportunities from my way, put myself in the way of opportunity.
I love that. My loving nice things, my dad always says, champagne taste on a beer budget for me. Pilar,
Yeah, I completely agree with Deb. I don't know that if I, personally, I, was born or at a young age thought I wanted to be in data, as you talk about, like in heavy analytics or go-to-market sales strategy. It just didn't dawn on me. But I always had a high drive, and I think I also really believed in if I was going to do something, I wanted to do something well. I think the role of mentors is incredibly important in that journey for me, and I have a cat, so he's very eager to join our webinar this morning. But I think for me, it was incredibly helpful for me to be able to go out and try different jobs. I think you start out, and I don't know if where you think you're going to start is where you're going to end. And I think that that is really common. And I started my career at Dell. Dell was very open to allowing people to move from supply chain to sales to marketing to operations to integration. And I tried lots of different things, and I learned a lot about what are my strengths and maybe the things that I wasn't as good at naturally. I started to narrow in on the things that I really enjoyed that spoke to my strengths. And I also had great mentors along the way who would either kind of help me along with some truth telling, which sometimes you don't get, which is maybe this isn't the right thing for you, or you should think about that. But even more so, I think the role of many of my mentors was also to help me have the confidence and to believe in myself, to take some of those risks. And so you talk about your career journey and maybe where you land. I don't know if this is the last place I land in terms of, what I am. Who knows? But I think every day I get a little smarter about what I love to do, my strengths, and I'm also more bold about picking roles that align to those two things.
I love that. That's so true. It's definitely the truth telling part of it anyway, right? Tracy, how about you?
I feel like I'm a cross section of what Debra and Pilar just said. I did not grow up on a sheep farm in Australia, but I did have parents who were very focused on making sure that I was constantly and consistently championed. They were pushing me. They were giving me opportunities. And when I went out in the world, I had that self-esteem and that strength to take on new challenges and to feel like I could do anything because I was raised that way. And I was also very fortunate, like Pilar, to have found a job early in my career that turned out to be life altering because I was allowed to go into HR and operations and IT and all these different functions. But I will say when I found myself in the marketing function, I stopped because that I did find my passion. I found that I gravitated to it very naturally, and I had brought to the table into marketing something they hadn't had prior, and that was data analytics and a very engineering minded background, which people raised their eyebrows at, but still gave me the space to take risks and to fail fast, and I failed a lot. But in each of those failures, I learned something that helped make my next adventure even more powerful. And then I will echo what Pilar said, finding mentors, women and men, who championed me, who pushed me, who told me I could do more even when I thought I couldn't, was incredibly empowering and gave me the strength to do it myself, but in turn also give that to other people. So giving back into the world that I live in was really important. So finding mentors and being a mentor is so enriching.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's good to find people who kind of trailblaze the path in front of you and follow their successes. So what was your respective journeys like? Did you all face any kind of gender bias? And if so, how did you deal with it? And Deb, we'll start with you again.
Sure. I don't think I was smart enough or astute enough at the time to think that I was encountering gender bias, but actually I was. I think the thing that stands out to me, I moved from Australia to New York 30 years ago to work in financial services, and the clue really should have been that every woman I met at any of our customers at that point in time was wearing a blue pinstripe pantsuit with a bow tie. Probably that we or they were all at that point in time dressing up to look a lot like their male colleagues. I then had some experiences where I had the good fortune of having a number of great executive coaches, and what I found was a lot of the coaching at that time was really about trying to fix me and make me show up a lot more like my male colleagues. How many times I had been told to be less emotional. I've probably lost count about how many feedback cues that I had from 30 years ago, where that was my big area for development. I'm happy to say, I tried to take that on. It was hard for me to depart from who I am, though, and I think what I bring as a leader is what I now recognize is a tremendous caring quotient and a huge for others. And fortunately, the world's turned, and I think particularly over the course of the last 12 months and how we've all had to live through this global pandemic, those qualities, of caring and empathy, which tend to often be more aligned to female leaders than male leaders, is now become really valued. And, I think for all of us, the message here is, be authentic. Yes, I clearly have encountered gender bias, although, I managed to step through it. But to me, it's really all about authenticity.
You tell them, Deb. That's right. I love it. Pilar?
I think I like what you said is that maybe I wasn't astute enough to know that it was bias, right? And certainly when I started in my career, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation around bias. It was heavy discrimination, right? And so it's like, if someone came and said something super inappropriate, it was sexual harassment. That was what, like the conversation was in terms of gender. It wasn't about bias. And bias, at least in my experience, is a newer conversation at work. And it's great because it starts to open your eyes to what that might look like that's different than perhaps sexual harassment, which would be way over the line. So it's a little micro inequities where it might be less emotional, everyone you work with, the way they dress. I've been to, events where they're very male oriented, where, certainly I've never been invited to a work event which was in an inappropriate place, but not everybody wants to go, go-kart racing. And that was the who's the fastest and the most competitive at the go-karts or whatever it might be. I've definitely seen it. I would say that, even in jobs, you can look and say, who are the people around you that are doing well, and they may all fit a certain mold, right? Maybe they're male, maybe they're from a certain background. You can kind of see that and say, well, okay, well, what am I going to do about this? And I think with some wisdom and perhaps some age and some great mentors, again, it's about, okay, well, is it something that I am okay with? Is it something I'm going to change about myself, or am I going to change where I'm at? And I think those are the decision-making processes. And maybe early on, it might have been, well, I'm going to change more of myself. And I would just encourage, when we see those micro inequities, I love the be authentic, because I think you just need to know that what we have and what makes us different is a good thing. And we can lead with that. And that authenticity or those different strengths is a tremendous value. And if they're not appreciated where you're at, you're great. Go find somewhere else to go and spread your wings. So that's kind of the decision-making process that I've seen. McAfee is really, really great on diversity, but it's not everywhere. And I think you've got to be yourself and be strong about it and kind of go through that decision-making process when it comes up.
Absolutely. I love what you said about just what makes us different. We talk a lot about, obviously right now, about customer experience and the intersection with digital and what does the buyer's journey look like, and it's not cookie cutter for everyone. And so this is, to me, where it really comes into play, like having all of these different personalities and all of these different points of view really just enriches that kind of experience or that sort of strategy. Tracy, what about you?
Also, just to add to that, like if you look at the panel you've put together, you've got 3 ladies who all identify themselves as, like data experts or into the data details, and that is so fun. Who knew?
Absolutely. I mean, the cream of the crop right here. So I'm very lucky to be sitting. I'd like to call it the Fantastic Four, but I'd say
yeah.
that for now.
You are right up there, Melissa. You're awesome.
Tracy, how about you? Did you face any sort of gender bias, and how did you deal with it?
So I'm probably slightly different than Debra and Pilar on this one. I'm like a bull in a china shop when it comes to gender bias. When I see it, there is no stopping me fighting against it. I too have been coached to be, I actually called it go to charm school, like be nicer, be softer, be more empathetic. And I too didn't recognize it as gender bias right away, but over the years I have, and I see it in pay and hours and treatments and job assignments. And every single time I see it, I put my fist down. I fight it. I try to educate. I'm tired of it. I'm not going to lie. It is so pervasive still today in 2021. And a lot of it has to do with just societal norms, what's acceptable, and the idea that, oh, well, you can just go spread your wings somewhere else. Well, I get that, but why can't I spread my wings here and be equal with the person sitting next to me? Why do I have to do that? So I encourage people to go chart their own course if that's the path they want to take, and create the environment that is equal, that does eliminate gender bias. It's just so critical that we don't let it happen. We don't passively sit by when we see it as leaders, as people who have the ability to persuade and to shine a light on it. We need to be able to do that so that the women behind us, the group behind us, gets the benefit of what we experienced and the ways that we thought it.
I love it. See, this is exactly why we needed you on here today. Thank you for sharing all that. And you're so right. It's like we create our own narrative, right? Or we at least try. I think for me, I definitely have had the experience where it's like, oh, the pretty girl has something to say. Isn't that cute? You know, it's kind of I think a lot of times, and I know I'm not the only one who's faced that, it's like, well, I mean, I'm going to use that to my advantage. But to your point, it's what makes us different. While we're all similar, we're all women, we're all human. We're all human beings. We're all just trying to get through the day, is what I always say, right? But I think that those little differences within us is what should be celebrated. We shouldn't be cookie cutter. We shouldn't all try to be the same. And that's more evident now here in 2021 than ever before. But you're right, Tracy, it is something that it's a journey, and it's something that is deeply rooted and something we need to continue to shed light on and just be aware, be conscious of what's going on around us.
Can I just add one thing, Melissa?
Yes.
I think it's really important, or in my observation, and I'd love to hear Debra and Pilar on this one as well, is gender bias isn't just men to women, it's women to women. Like, you don't need to root out gender bias between the male and female. It's typically pervasive in an organization and enacted upon by all players.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you know, you talk about really taking a stand and standing up. I also think as a woman, you know, we need to do better, right? And looking at the biases that are out there and digging in and leading. And I do think you're right. It's not just men, it is also women. And sometimes the hardest is the women, you know, like women against women, right? And again, what those micro inequities and how it shows up can be that much harder to really bring to light or to change, but it doesn't mean we can't make a stand and make a difference.
Absolutely.
I think it's really an incredible call out, Tracy. I think that's so true, and I say that a lot. You know, what I really ask women to do to be on the affirmative and is actually to promote other women. You know, there are so many opportunities. I think that we all have to, you know, someone says something about another woman and you have the opportunity to go, she did an amazing job. I just want to call out what this woman did. You know, I think we all need to be cheerleaders for each other, not to show up stereotypical biases, because we all have them, but also to work harder to actually really be champions and cheerleaders for other women that are in our orbit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's part of that truth telling, right? It's you want the truth telling from men to women, women to men, and women to women, especially because we speak each other's language, so to speak. And rather than having that sort of cattiness behind your back or jealousy or whatever emotion is present there, it's that truth telling between women. I completely agree with that. Thank you for bringing that up, Tracy. So all of that said, what practices do you all think that companies or the B2B community should start or stop doing to sort of end this gender bias or the micro inequities? Deb, we'll start with you again.
Look, you know, I have had a lot of opportunity to contribute to this dialogue. We set about, when we were part of Thomson Reuters in 2012, we basically formed an executive leadership group to really move the needle on gender diversity. And I think first and foremost, you have to stop making this an HR. HR can facilitate the process, but gender bias and the lack of diversity in leadership teams and in organizations, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's ethnic persuasion, sexual preference, a lack of diversity is just bad for business. Our companies have to show up, representing the employee base, but also representing our marketplace, our buyers and our investors. We have to stop making it an HR issue to make it a business issue. I think companies that have been successful have really led this from the C-suite and led this from the CEO. I think organizations that have been effective, it's the CEO's mission to make a change. That was certainly the case for me at Thomson Reuters. And the other thing that I think will be near and dear to Tracy, Pilar, will be you have to ground yourself in the data. And that was the first thing we really did, was we looked to understand our data. We looked to understand where we had issues in the hierarchy. We actually determined, we were doing a really good job at the entry-level roles, but we were losing women in the K&L band, sort of that one level below senior leadership, so we set out to tackle it. The other thing that we've done is also used our core competency of data and index development. One of the things I'm most proud of is that we have built a diversity and inclusion index, which tracks 7,000 companies, basically 80% of the world's market cap, and how they are performing on a financial basis and how they are performing in terms of our diversity and inclusion metrics. And what I can tell you, and very proudly, is to show that the companies that are in our index, that index is actually outperforming world standard index measures in terms of financial performance. So it really speaks to the fact that there is a very high correlation between companies that are highly diverse, have high practices, and strong financial. So ground yourself in the data.
Deb, I think we just found the title for your next clinic. Pilar?
Oh, you're just speaking my language. I think that when you put out data, when you understand the problem, we're pretty good at going out and fixing it, no matter what it is. And I've seen this at other companies as well as McAfee. I think it starts with first an acknowledgement of what we want to be, right, and an alignment. And I do think it is a C-suite thing. It is not an HR thing. And then I also too often find that diversity is run by females, right? Like it's, oh, well, we have a diversity initiative. Let's find like our most senior female, our most, diverse from ethnic background and put them on it. And so I really love, there's a program called MARC, which is Men Advocating for Real Change, but I think it's all of our jobs, not just women, not just someone who's considered diverse. I love the data component of it. I think what you said, Debra, really resonates to me as well. We look at diversity metrics for our teams. We look at it from individual teams. It's something we have to report out really regularly. We have to ensure that there's always a female in every interview panel. I think when you have all male panels, you're more likely to hire another male. And I think the one that you brought up, I've seen at other companies as well, which is when you do pretty well at entry level or mid-level, but as you go up, you don't. And so when we're doing calibration and like talent planning, and you look at future potential, which is a pretty common metric, we went and took diversity metrics and looked at that, and we found it was a former company, and I don't want to disclose anything about McAfee, but almost all the people, so 85% of the people that we had identified that had like strong future potential were all male. And so we were basically self-identifying the fact that the executives of the future were all male. And so it was a great opportunity for us to take a step back. But I do think it's all about first acknowledging the problem. I think it's setting a course and a charter for the teams. It's measuring it. And then just continuing to have the conversation. There's great women's groups out there. There's great diversity groups. Again, shouldn't be led by just women, and it shouldn't be led by HR.
Absolutely. Tracy, how about you?
brilliant things. And I wrote down what Pilar said about the hiring panel. I'm going to bring that back to my organization today. That is such a phenomenal insight, and the idea that as leaders, we need to make sure that we're all accountable. Don't always assign it to that one person that gets those tasks every time is so key. I think I'm not sure when this is going to air, Melissa, but yesterday in 2021 it was Equal Pay Day.
Yeah.
And it just hit me hard yesterday. It happens every year, but yesterday it hit me really hard that I would have had to work until yesterday to make the same pay as my peers in 2020. So I actually thought about being on this panel and thinking about that day. And so much of this starts with professionalizing the roles that women are in and making sure that we are paid equitably. And I mean total compensation. I don't just mean equal pay, because I have seen excuses. Well, no, these people are paid the same, but and my point is they're not bonused the same. They're not given the same equity in the company. They're not on the same promotional track and given many of the opportunities to go to conferences or get education inside the organization. And that keeps them moving further away from that equal pay over time. So I'll put a nod out there to equal pay and total compensation as something that every company can and should be looking at very carefully.
Such a great call out. The 82 really resonates with me.
Definitely. I think this is a great discussion to just bring some of these things to light, because it would be difficult for one person, to your point, to think of everything that's involved in terms of DEI for women, for all different circumstances, certainly. So I love having these shows so that we can definitely bring insight and shed light on some of the issues that maybe another executive out there hasn't thought about or didn't consider. So thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today. That's all we have for today. I mean, we could talk for hours. We'll have to do this again. Next time, definitely would love to have you all again, and thank you so much. And for our audience, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. This is a really important topic, and we'll probably have to chop this into segments, and don't be surprised if you see it multiple times. But just a couple of takeaways for me. I've definitely, number one, having mentors. If you are in the beginning or the later stages of your career, it's never too late to have mentors to help you sort of along your path and figure out where your strengths lie, and things change as you grow up, so to speak. So definitely the mentorship piece is tremendous. Number two, we need to be champions for one another, not just men to women, women to men, but women to women. We just need to champion one another as human beings. And again, as we've all got similarities in that we're trying to get through the day. We've all got challenges. I think we learned that last year, that we are all just human beings, and we need to be champions for one another. And we really need to champion one another to continue to be authentic. And then third, DEI, it's not an HR problem. Ground yourself in the data. I love that. I think we could have another clinic on that in itself. But ground yourself in the data and really be outward in and honest with yourselves as an organization and as an ELT, and see where your inequities are and where you really can strive to be better and to improve the situation. Any last comments from you all?
I would just like to say what a privilege it was to be in this conversation with you, Melissa, and Tracy and Pilar. It's just great always to have the opportunity to hear from other really inspiring women. Thank you.
I'll echo what Debra just said. Melissa, thank you for bringing us together.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for bringing us together and helping to get the conversation out. It's an important conversation, and it starts with us all kind of telling our stories and our journeys and what's working and what's not. So it's just a pleasure to listen to all of your stories and also to spend the time together this morning.
Definitely. This is not the end of this conversation. To our audience, thank you. You have a choice where you spend your eyes and ears. Thank you for joining the Revenue Growth Help Desk, and we'll talk to you again soon.